Mr. Coons, no. Ms. Cortez Masto, aye. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Ms. Blunt Rochester, no. Mr. Sullivan, aye. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Budd, no. Mr. Warnock, aye. Mr. Schiff,
I do stick with that.
aye.
Especially because,
Mr. Schmidt, aye. Ms. Lummis, aye. Mr. Whitehouse, aye. Ms. Ernst, aye. Mr. Hoven, aye. Mr. Schumer, no. Mr. Welch, no. Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Ms. Slotkin, aye. Mr. Graham, aye. Mr. Hawley, aye. Mr. Bennett, aye. Mr. Gallego, aye.
Well, it's a little.
Ms. Hirono, no. Mr. King, no.
Are you upset?
Ms. Murkowski, aye. Mr. Risch, aye. Mr. Cruz, aye. Mr. Padilla, no. Mr. Peters. Mr. Peters, aye.
In this vote, the yeas are 67, the nays are 32, and the nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table, and the President will be immediately notified of the Senate's action. Under the previous order, the Senate will resume legislative session and resume consideration of the motion to proceed S-331, which the clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 18, S-331, a bill to amend the Controlled Substances Act and so forth and for other purposes.
Under the previous order, the question occurs on the motion to proceed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the bill.
Calendar number 18, S-331, a bill to amend the Controlled Substances Act and so forth and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I call up Grassley Amendment number 1237.
The clerk will report.
Senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune, for Mr. Grassley, proposes an amendment number 1237.
Mr. President, I ask that the reading be dispensed with,
Without objection,
and I move to proceed to executive session and consider calendar number 31.
questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, Executive Office of the President, Stephen Moran of New York to be Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Stephen Moran of New York to be Chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived,
Without objection.
and I move to proceed to legislative session.
The questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to.
Mr. President, I move to proceed to executive session and consider calendar number 34.
The questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will report the nomination.
Nomination, Department of Labor, Keith Sonderling of Florida to be Deputy Secretary.
Mr. President, I send a cloture motion to the desk.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion, we, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the nomination of Keith Sonderling of Florida to be Deputy Secretary of Labor, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the reading of the names be waived.
Without objection,
Yield the floor, because Maria's next.
Mr. President.
Senator from Ohio.
Mr. President, with great honor, I stand before you. As you know, I've been in this chamber for 10 weeks, and it's one of the greatest honors of my life to represent the people of Ohio here in the United States Senate. It's especially an honor because I wasn't born in this country. I was born in Bogota, Colombia. My mom and dad moved myself, my sister, and my 5 brothers to America to find a different opportunity, a better opportunity. We are part of a long line of immigrants that have come to this country to make this country stronger and to make this country better and to live our version of the American dream. We know what happened, Mr. President, over the last 4 years at our southern border. It was a total and complete disgrace. It's a disgrace not just because of the unlimited amount of people that came into this country, almost 10 million encounters over a 4-year period, but it's a disgrace because that's not how we should welcome people to this nation. We should not have people who want to come to America pay a drug cartel to smuggle them across Mexico, raped along the way, beaten along the way, every last cent that they have robbed from them and their families, and then smuggled into the country, and then charged even more money when they think the journey's over. In some cases, the people come into the interior of the country and have to pay back enormous sums of money so that cartel members don't come into the country and find them and kill them or kill their family members back home. That's no way to have people come to this country. Now, if you look at this chart, it's a very famous chart because President Trump referred to it at his rally. You can see immigration is not a new issue in this country. We've had a problem for a long, long time. President Trump took office, and he put in place right here an executive order. And what that executive order did is it said, hey, you can only claim asylum at a legal port of entry. So if you cross the river, if you scale a wall, if you go through a tunnel, you can't claim asylum once you get to the other side. Because as we know, asylum is for refugees, people who are fleeing dangerous situations because of their race, their religion, or their political beliefs. So when he put that in place, look what happened, Mr. President. A total collapse of border encounters. Now, President Trump left office. Joe Biden rescinded that executive order, and we saw what happened. Massive spike in illegal crossings, devastating our Border Patrol agents. Our Border Patrol agents were totally outmanned. They were completely overwhelmed and unable to do their jobs. Now, in a political season, Joe Biden put in place the exact same executive order. What did that executive order say? You can only claim asylum at a legal port of entry. If you enter through a non-designated port of entry, you're immediately returned. And look what happened. Another massive drop. Now here, President Trump took office and is now actively returning anybody who comes through in a non-designated port of entry. And we're down to 8,326 border crossings in 1 month. At the peak of Biden, that number was almost 350,000. We didn't have to pass a law. We didn't have to hire new Border Patrol agents. We didn't need new equipment. We honestly didn't even need more wall. We needed better policy. Mr. President, I campaigned to run for the United States Senate for 2 years. And during that 2-year period of time, I drove to every corner of my incredible state. I drove to every corner of Ohio. And to a man or a woman, the voters would tell me, please go down to Washington, D.C. and do something. The American people want to have faith and confidence that their leaders are actually able to come together and accomplish legislation that's purely common sense. So I present to you, Mr. President, today, a very simple bill. Very simple bill. We don't have to boil the ocean. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's very simple. It says, if you're an asylum seeker, you must file a claim for asylum at a legal port of entry. If you're going to come to America and you're seeking asylum, do it at a legal port of entry. No release of asylum applicants into the interior of the country. We're going to follow the law. We're going to have them wait in the prior country, and in 180 days, which is currently the law, which is being violated, sometimes it's 5 or 6 years, but they wait until their asylum claim is heard. There's no second chance. Once we've identified that you have a fake asylum claim, then you can no longer claim asylum ever again. And anyone who entered the U.S. illegally is banned from claiming asylum. We welcome people in our homes every day. We don't let people break through our windows to come see us, because that's insane. Now, I know that my Democrat colleagues are in a mode where they want to fight everything that we're doing, Mr. President, but we should at least come together on this. And as I look over at my Democrat colleague, there's only two of us in this entire chamber that are naturalized U.S. citizens. We know firsthand what it means to be able to be accepted by this country. 98 were born here, 2 of us were not. We became citizens of this country, and we got the ultimate opportunity to represent this country in the United States Senate. Let's come together one time and show the American people we don't have to fight about everything. We can actually accomplish common sense legislation. Let's put in code. Let's put in legislation those executive orders that not once, not twice, but 3 times has been proven to reduce border encounters. I can't imagine that my Democrat colleagues will fight this. And I hope, as somebody who's been here for 10 weeks, as opposed to my colleagues, some of them have been here for 2 or 3 decades, fail to understand that the American people are watching. The American people want to have a Senate and a House and a government that can actually do something that matters a lot to them. So I will yield to my Democrat colleague from Hawaii, and I implore you, let's show leadership together, you and I. Let's show this leadership and get a very, very simple bill accomplished. And I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on the Judiciary be discharged from further consideration of S-200 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. Further, I ask that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be made and laid upon the table.
Is there an objection?
Mr. President.
The senator from Hawaii.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. My colleague claims that this bill will reform our broken asylum system. As the other naturalized citizen in this body, I object. And we actually passed comprehensive immigration reform out of this Senate in 2013. And I was one of the senators who worked on that bipartisan bill. But when the bill got to the House, it didn't pass. So we are here once again. And more recently, there was a bipartisan immigration bill that was about to be brought to the Senate, and everything was set to go until the current president decided that he would much rather this issue continue to not be addressed. So there you go. We can all agree that our immigration and asylum systems need reforms, but I have serious concerns about this legislation. My colleague has stated that this bill is intended to prevent those who come to the United States in between ports of entry from applying for asylum. But as it is drafted, this bill eliminates the section of the law that allows people present in the United States to apply for asylum. This means that it would prevent anyone, even those who have lawful status, from applying inside the United States. Instead, they would have to travel to a port of entry. This bill would also require that anyone, including families seeking asylum at a port of entry, be arrested and held in custody for the entire time their request is pending, and it could take quite a long time, using taxpayer money to detain them. I certainly agree with my colleague that we need to do more to address our immigration court backlog, which includes many asylum cases, and improve our asylum system, but this legislation would not address these concerns. Let me give you an example. This bill would prevent a Ukrainian fleeing Russian aggression who entered lawfully from applying for asylum from within the United States. It would force them to travel with their families to a port of entry to apply for asylum. They would then be detained with their children while they wait for their application to be processed. These are individuals who have work permits and are contributing to our economy and society every day. They came here lawfully. How does making them leave and seek asylum at a port of entry improve our system? It doesn't. Here's the reality. This bill and the recent actions by the Trump administration are not focused on truly addressing problems with our asylum system. If the Trump administration was serious about improving our asylum system, why did they recently fire nearly 24 impartial immigration judges without cause or notice? They fired military veterans and expert judges who had experience processing immigration cases effectively. With a backlog of over 3.6 million immigration cases, You heard me right. 3.6 million immigration cases. We need more immigration judges, not less. But the current leadership at the Executive Office of Immigration Review, which oversees immigration courts, has said they plan to fire more judges. Exactly the wrong thing to do. This is no way to address our broken immigration system. I urge you Republicans to set aside this misguided bill and to stop taking a chainsaw to our federal workforce, including immigration judges. Believe me, this chainsaw approach to what is going on in our federal government, if the administration wanted to create fear and chaos, if that is their aim, they are succeeding mightily. I urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join us in good faith to work on the truly comprehensive bipartisan immigration reforms we so desperately need. For these reasons, Mr. President, I object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President,
The senator from Ohio.
if I could just go back and just reiterate a couple points for my colleague. The executive order went in, border crossings dropped. President Biden put in place the exact same executive order that in effect is this exact legislation. Border crossings dropped. I have a question. I'm confused by my colleague's explanation about the Ukrainian refugees. If they're coming from Ukraine and they're entering through a legal port of entry, that's when they would claim asylum. I don't think we have a scenario where we're asking Americans or legal residents to apply for asylum. Because if you're already in the interior of the country, that decision was already made. So if you're the Ukrainian family that you talked about, well, you claim asylum at the legal port of entry. The law says, which we're not following, this body refuses to enforce its own laws, is that we'll adjudicate that claim in 180 days. I absolutely never said they would be arrested. In fact, nothing in this bill mentions being arrested. What it says is they must wait in the prior safe country. So in the case of Ukraine, they can go to France, apply for asylum there, wait 180 days, and then we'll welcome them with open arms to America. The right way, the legal way. I hope my colleague is not hoping for a scenario where that Ukrainian family goes to Mexico City, pays a drug cartel member a few $1,000s and gets smuggled across the border, across a river with a family where the children, who knows what can happen to them. That's how you want refugees to come to this country? That doesn't even make any sense. There's nobody being arrested by this bill. There's nobody being detained by this bill. It's exactly the opposite. We're asking the refugee to wait in the prior safe country for 180 days, which is the law, and then once your claim is adjudicated, we welcome you with open arms. My colleague mentioned that there's 3.6 million cases backlog. That's true. It's a stunning and shameful number. What she doesn't mention is that 90+% of those cases, a judge rules once they get to it in 5 or 6 or 7 years that it's an invalid asylum claim. Doesn't mean that they're not economic migrants. Doesn't mean that there's somebody who may want to come to this country. But they're people who are clearly not refugees. Not my thoughts, the thoughts of immigration judges that are making this decision over and over again. But only in Washington, D.C. Only when you've been here so long that your head can't see straight. Do you think it's a better idea to have unlimited amounts of fake asylum claims? And the way you handle that, instead of changing the law, is to hire thousands of more judges to give the answer you already know, to waste taxpayer dollars that way? You know, that my colleagues talk about Republicans being on the side of billionaires. You know what billionaires the Democrats have created? The drug cartel members that are making billions of dollars smuggling people. I went to a border crossing in Del Rio, Texas. The Border Patrol agents let me come to right to the edge of the river. I saw 4 people come across, 2 men, 2 women. The minute they landed, they got on their knees and said, asilo, asilo, which is asylum in Spanish. I asked them if they knew what that meant. They said no, but that's what the drug cartel had told them to say the minute they landed in America. They're not refugees. Why are you making those Ukrainian families wait behind economic migrants claiming fake asylum claims? Look, this is what's wrong with Washington, D.C. This is an easy, obvious fix. The data proves it out. You put that law in place, border crossings drop. Trump, Biden, Trump, they put the exact executive order in place. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. On CBS just yesterday, Face the Nation. Wake up on a beautiful Sunday and turn on Face the Nation. Margaret Brennan asked Congressman Zawazi, I apologize if I pronounce his name wrong. Margaret Brennan says to the congressman, illegal border crossings, as we just discussed, they are at a historic low. President Trump made that point when he was addressing Congress this week. Was he right that he didn't need to wait for Congress? We didn't need comprehensive immigration reform. Was he right that it really was messaging for the White House beyond? This is what a Democrat from New York says. Well, obviously, keyword obviously, we've seen a reduction in crossings. Why is it obvious? Because we know this works. We know that if we make asylum only at a legal port of entry, 180 days to process, can't claim it if you cross illegally. We know, obviously, his words. Well, obviously, we've seen a reduction in crossings. We saw it under Biden at the end of his administration, after he did his executive order to say no asylum applications are between ports of entry. But we need to make it permanent law. Democrat member of the House of Representatives, we need to make it permanent law. I guess after 10 weeks in the United States Senate, I should expect that everything has to be hard. Everything has to be a battle. But I can tell you, people all over this country, the people who don't watch C-SPAN 24/7, the people that don't go on X and read every last debate between their elected members, they're just regular Americans that want to enjoy their lives, pay taxes, cannot understand why we can't come together on something so incredibly simple, so easy. Democrat president did it, Republican president did it, it works. This is not theoretical. And to my colleague, I don't want those Ukrainian refugees waiting behind millions of economic migrants. It's not fair to them. Why would we do that? I yield back.
The senator from Hawaii.
Mr. President, I hear my colleague acknowledging that the asylum system is broken. My objections remain.
The senator from Ohio.
I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on the Judiciary be discharged from further consideration of S-200 and the bill be placed on the legislative calendar.
Is there an objection? The senator from Hawaii.
Reserving the right to object. For the reasons previously stated, I object.
The objection is heard.
So I start here. Mr. President,
The senator from Ohio.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate resume legislative session and be in a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I understand that there's a bill at the desk, and I ask for its first reading.
The clerk will read the title of the bill for the first time.
S924, making further continuing appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2025, and for other purposes.
Mr. President,
The senator from Ohio.
I now ask for a second reading, and in order to place the bill on the calendar under the provisions of Rule 14, I object to my own request.
The objection is heard. The bill will be read for the second time on the next legislative day.
Mr. President,
The senator from Ohio.
I ask unanimous consent that the Senate completes its business today, is stand in recess until 10 a.m. on Tuesday, March 11th, that following the prayer and pledge, the Journal of Proceedings be approved to date, the time for the two leaders be reserved for their use later in the day, and that the Senate proceed to executive session and resume consideration of calendar number 26. Further, that at 11:45 a.m., the Senate vote on cloture on the Bradbury nomination, and that following the cloture vote, the Senate recess until 2:15 p.m. to allow for the weekly conference meetings, and that at 2:15 p.m., if cloture is invoked, the Senate vote on confirmation of the Bradbury nomination, followed by cloture of the Slater nomination. Further, that if cloture is invoked on the Slater nomination, that all time be expired and the Senate vote on confirmation at 5:15 p.m. Finally, if any nominations are confirmed during Tuesday's sessions, the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, and the President be immediately notified of the Senate's action.
Without objection.
If there's no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it stand in recess under the previous order. I ask unanimous consent. Oh, sorry.
The Senate stands in recess until 10 a.m. tomorrow.